The bullet was meant for Bumpy Johnson's head. It missed by 3 inches. It shattered the window of a Harlem barber shop on 125th Street and buried itself in the wall behind the barber's chair. Bumpy did not move. He did not duck. He did not run. He simply looked at the hole in the glass, then looked at the car speeding away, then went back to reading his newspaper. The barber was on the floor, shaking, praying to God. The other customers had scattered like roaches when the lights come on. But Bumpy Johnson sat in that chair like nothing had happened. Like someone had not just tried to kill him in broad daylight, like death itself was too boring to acknowledge. 3 blocks away, in a smoke-filled back room above a butcher shop, Dutch Schultz slammed his fist on the table so hard the whiskey glasses jumped. "What do you mean he is still alive?" The messenger was sweating, trembling. He had seen what Dutch did to people who brought bad news. "The boys missed, boss." Johnson did not even move. He just sat there. Dutch Schultz stood up slowly. He was not a tall man. He was not an impressive man. He had a face like a bulldog and eyes that never seemed to blink. But when Dutch Schultz stood up, people stopped breathing. He just sat there. Dutch repeated the words slowly, like he was tasting them, like they were poison. "Let me tell you something about Harlem. Those people up there, they are going to work for me. Every numbers runner, every policy bank, every penny that changes hands on those streets is going to end up in my pocket. And Bumpy Johnson, he is going to watch me take everything he has. And then I am going to kill him so slow that he begs me to finish it. Do you understand?" The messenger nodded frantically. "Good. Now get out of my sight before I use you for target practice." This was October 1933. Dutch Schultz was the most violent, most unpredictable, most dangerous gangster in New York City. He had killed his way to the top of the beer business during Prohibition. He had murdered competitors, witnesses, and anyone who looked at him wrong. He was worth millions. And now he had set his eyes on Harlem, but Dutch Schultz had made a mistake. A fatal mistake. He had tried to kill Bumpy Johnson, and Bumpy Johnson was not a man who forgave. He was not a man who forgot. He was a man who waited, who planned, who struck when his enemies least expected it. This is the story of how one man stood against an army, how a black gangster from South Carolina defeated the most feared white mobster in New York, how Bumpy Johnson became the godfather of Harlem, not through violence alone, but through something far more dangerous: intelligence, patience, and a willingness to die before he would ever kneel. Harlem in 1933 was the capital of Black America. It was where dreams lived and sometimes died, and at the center of its underground economy was the numbers game. A simple, illegal lottery where you picked 3 numbers and prayed. Poor people played it, because it was the only chance they had to change their lives overnight. And the money it generated was staggering. Hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. All of it controlled by black operators who had built empires from nothing. The most powerful of them was Stephanie St. Clair. They called her Queenie. She had arrived from the Caribbean with nothing and built a numbers empire worth millions. She was ruthless. She was brilliant. She paid off cops and politicians. She answered to no one, and when Dutch Schultz came for Harlem, she was his first target. Dutch did not negotiate. He invaded. His method was simple. His men would walk into a numbers bank, beat everyone inside half to death, take all the money, and deliver a message. "You work for Dutch Schultz now, or you die." One by one, the black numbers operators fell. Some switched sides immediately. Some tried to fight and were murdered. Some simply disappeared, their bodies floating in the East River or buried in the swamps of New Jersey. Within months, Dutch Schultz controlled more than half of the Harlem numbers game. Queenie was losing everything. Her banks were being robbed. Her runners were being killed. She needed someone who could fight back. Someone crazy enough to go to war with the most dangerous man in New York. She called Bumpy Johnson to her apartment on Edgecombe Avenue. Bumpy was not a boss. Not yet. He was an enforcer. A problem solver. He was 31 years old, tall, dark-skinned, with a bump on the back of his head from a childhood injury that gave him his nickname. He was known for two things: his intelligence and his complete inability to feel fear. Queenie laid out the situation. Her voice was tired, defeated. "I am losing, Bumpy. Schultz has more men, more guns, more money. I do not know how to stop him." Bumpy listened. He let her finish. Then he asked a question that changed everything. "Why are we fighting alone?" Queenie frowned. "What do you mean?" "Dutch Schultz has enemies. Powerful enemies. Men who want him dead. We cannot beat Schultz by ourselves, but we do not have to. We just need to find the right friends." That night, Bumpy Johnson did something that no black gangster had ever done. He reached out to the Italian mob. Lucky Luciano was the most powerful gangster in New York. He had just organized the 5 families into a national crime syndicate. He was calm, calculating, always thinking 10 moves ahead. And he despised Dutch Schultz. Schultz was unpredictable. Schultz was violent for no reason. Schultz was bad for business. The other bosses tolerated him because he made money. But they were waiting for a reason to get rid of him. Bumpy Johnson was going to give them that reason. The meeting happened in a warehouse in the Bronx. Neutral territory. Bumpy came alone. Luciano brought 2 men. They sat across from each other at a wooden table. 2 worlds, 2 colors. 2 men who should have been enemies, but who recognized something in each other. Bumpy spoke first. "Schultz is taking Harlem. He is killing my people. He is stealing our business. I want to stop him, but I cannot do it alone." Luciano studied him with cold eyes. "What are you proposing?" "An alliance. You want Schultz gone. I want Schultz gone. We help each other." Luciano smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "And what do you want in return?" "Harlem." Bumpy's voice did not waver. "When Schultz is gone, the Italians stay out of Harlem. The numbers game belongs to us. You get everything else. But Harlem is ours." The room went silent. A black man telling the Italian mob where they could and could not operate. Any other gangster would have been killed for such arrogance. But Luciano was not any other gangster. He saw something in Bumpy Johnson that he rarely saw. A man who meant every word he said. "You have a deal." They shook hands. And the death warrant for Dutch Schultz was signed. But Luciano was not ready to move yet. Killing a boss, even an unpopular one, required approval from the commission. It required a reason beyond business disputes. Bumpy would have to weaken Schultz first, make him desperate, make him make a mistake. Bumpy began his campaign in the shadows. He did not attack Schultz's main operations. He attacked the edges, the small collection points, the runners who worked alone. One by one, they started disappearing. Money vanished. Messages were left. Harlem fights back. But Bumpy's real weapon was not violence. It was psychology. He wanted Schultz's men to fear the dark. One night, Schultz's most trusted collector, a massive Irishman named Big Mike Callahan, went to a secret drop point on Lenox Avenue. He went every Friday at the same time. No one knew about it. At least that is what he thought. When Big Mike opened the door, the room was dark. Then a match flared. Bumpy Johnson was sitting in a chair in the corner, alone. No gun visible. Just sitting there like he owned the place. Big Mike reached for his pistol. "I would not do that," Bumpy said, calmly. "There are 3 men outside with shotguns pointed at this door. You pull that trigger, you will be dead before you hit the floor. Sit down, Mike. Let us talk." Big Mike sat. His hands were shaking. "You work for Dutch Schultz," Bumpy continued. "You collect his money. You hurt my people. I understand. A man has to make a living. But here is what you need to understand. Dutch Schultz is going to die. Maybe not today. Maybe not next month. But soon. And when he dies, everyone who worked for him is going to have a choice. Leave Harlem forever, or join him in the ground. Big Mike swallowed hard. What do you want from me? Nothing. Tonight you walk out of here alive. You go back to Schultz. You tell him nothing about this conversation. But when the time comes, you remember that I let you live. And you make the smart choice. Bumpy stood up and walked out. He left Big Mike alone in the dark, trembling, trying to understand what had just happened. The next week, Big Mike Callahan quit. He told Schultz he was retiring, moving to Florida, getting out of the business. Schultz was furious, but he could not prove anything. He could not understand why his best men were suddenly losing their nerve. But Harlem understood. Word spread through the barbershops and the jazz clubs. Bumpy Johnson had walked into a room with one of Schultz's killers and walked out without a scratch. He was not just fighting Dutch Schultz, he was breaking him. One man at a time. The war escalated. Bodies started appearing. Schultz's men found in alleys with their throats cut, shot in the back while walking home, strangled in their own apartments. The message was clear. No one who worked for Dutch Schultz was safe in Harlem after dark. Schultz responded with more violence. He sent more men. He ordered more killings. But it was like fighting smoke. Bumpy was everywhere and nowhere. He moved constantly. He never slept in the same place twice. Every doorman, every shoeshine boy, every waitress in Harlem was watching and reporting back to Bumpy. Dutch Schultz was losing his mind. The man who had terrorized the Bronx, who had made grown men weep with fear, was being humiliated by a black man in Harlem. His reputation was crumbling, his men were deserting, and the other bosses were starting to notice. Then Dutch Schultz made the mistake that killed him. Thomas Dewey was a federal prosecutor, young, brilliant, incorruptible. He had made it his mission to destroy organized crime in New York. And his primary target was Dutch Schultz. Dewey was building a case. Subpoenas were flying. Witnesses were being gathered. The walls were closing in. Dutch Schultz saw only one way out. He called a meeting of the commission. He stood before the most powerful gangsters in America and made a proposal so insane that it still echoes through history. I want to kill Thomas Dewey. The room went silent. Kill a federal prosecutor. Murder a public official. Bring down the full weight of the United States government on organized crime. It was madness. Lucky Luciano spoke first. His voice was ice. If you kill Dewey, every cop in America will come after us. Every politician we own will abandon us. You will destroy everything we have built. The answer is no. But Schultz would not accept. No. He stood up, his face red with rage. Fine. I will do it myself. With or without your approval. Dewey dies. He stormed out. Luciano turned to the other bosses. The decision was made without another word. Dutch Schultz had signed his own death warrant. On October 23, 1935, Dutch Schultz walked into the Palace Chop House in Newark, New Jersey. He was meeting his accountants, discussing the Dewey problem, planning his next move. Two men walked through the door. They did not hesitate. They did not announce themselves. They just started shooting. The first bullet hit Schultz's accountant. He fell sideways, spraying blood across the white tablecloth. The second bullet hit the bodyguard. The third bullet hit Dutch Schultz in the chest. He stumbled backward. His hands clutched at the wound. Blood poured between his fingers. He crashed into a table and collapsed onto the floor. But Dutch Schultz did not die quickly. He was rushed to the hospital. For 22 hours he lingered between life and death, delirious, mumbling words that made no sense. A police stenographer sat by his bed, writing down everything he said. Mother is the best bet. Do not let Satan draw you too fast. The chimney sweeps. Take me out. French-Canadian bean soup. I want to pay. Let them leave me alone. The doctors could not explain it. The detectives could not decode it. But in Harlem, the old men understood. Dutch Schultz had lived by chaos and died by chaos. His mind was as broken as his empire. He could not control anything, not his men, not his territory, not even his own dying words. At 8:35 p.m. on October 24, 1935, Dutch Schultz finally stopped talking. The most feared gangster in New York was dead. When the news reached Harlem, there were no parades, no celebrations in the streets, just a quiet exhale. A weight lifted. A monster slain. Bumpy Johnson kept his end of the bargain. The Italians stayed out of Harlem. The numbers game returned to black control, and Bumpy Johnson became the undisputed king of the neighborhood he loved. He ruled for the next 30 years, through wars and betrayals, through prison sentences and comebacks, through the rise of heroin and the destruction it would bring to his community. He was no saint. He did terrible things. He hurt people. He profited from suffering. But he also built something. He proved that a black man could stand against a white oppressor and win. He proved that intelligence could defeat brutality. He proved that Harlem belonged to the people who lived there. On July 7, 1968, Bumpy Johnson collapsed on a Harlem street, just a few blocks from the barbershop, where that bullet had missed him 35 years earlier. Heart attack. He was 62 years old. They buried him in Woodlawn Cemetery. Thousands came. Gangsters, politicians, musicians. Ordinary people who remembered what he had done. Queenie St. Clair was there. She was 80 years old now, frail. But her eyes were still sharp. A reporter asked her how she would remember Bumpy Johnson. She smiled. A tired smile. A proud smile. He made Harlem too expensive to buy. That is how I will remember him. He made them pay a price they could not afford. The story of Bumpy Johnson and Dutch Schultz is not in the history books. It is passed down in whispers, in barbershops, in the memories of old men who remember when Harlem was a kingdom and Bumpy Johnson was its king. Dutch Schultz thought he could take Harlem because he had more guns. He thought terror was enough. He thought black people would break. He was wrong. He lost his empire. He lost his mind. He lost his life. And the man who beat him never fired the final shot. Some wars are won with armies. Some wars are won with weapons. And some wars are won by one man who refuses to be afraid, who thinks when others panic, who waits when others rush, who turns his enemies against each other and watches them destroy themselves. Bumpy Johnson was that man. And 80 years later, when people talk about Harlem, they still say his name with respect. Not because he was a good man, because he was the right man at the right time, and because when that bullet missed by 3 inches, it did not just spare a life. It created a legend.